What is up, everybody? Welcome back to Macho Movie Madness.
Oh yeah.
I'm Brandon. Alongside me always is Andrew, and today we've got a horror versus for you. It's the original Hills Have Eyes versus the '06 remake.
The blackest eyes, the devil's eyes. Why don't we just wait here for a little while, see what happens?
Do you want to die, Sydney?
For England, James? No.
We all go a little mad sometimes.
Fill your hand, you son of a bitch!
Look what you did to him!
I have come here to chew bubblegum and kick ass. And I'm all out of bubblegum.
As you can see, I'm not happy.
What is up, guys? So, like I said, we have got a horror versus today. We're going back into horror for just a little bit. We're doing the 1977 Hills Have Eyes versus the '06 remake of Hills Have Eyes. And, man, honestly, Andrew, I've seen a little bit here and there, I think like you have, of both of these movies, but never watched them in full until recently, just for this.
Yeah, I figured this would be a pretty good versus. You go on IMDb, and the original is a 6.3, and the remake is a 6.4. And, you know, there are a lot of similarities between them. The remake does try to do its own thing, as we were talking before we came on about, you know, there's a lot more about the atomic testing and stuff. But, yeah, very equal in my eyes. I thought it would be a good versus.
I think so, too. There's very, very little differences. But the differences that are there, really, maybe they just come with the times and the budget. But yeah, I like both of them pretty well equally. I think one's a little grittier and old fashioned, obviously, and the other one's a lot more grotesque.
Yeah,
but they both are worth a watch in my opinion. Just breaking down real quick before we get into our categories. Hills Have Eyes, I think I mentioned it already, came out in 1977. It was directed and written by Wes Craven, the late great Wes Craven. And Hills Have Eyes remake, which came out in '06, was, I think, the screenplay and was directed by Alexander Aja. He's French. Oui.
I just want to eat.
I just want to eat. But I think it's Aja, and that's what I'm saying because I don't care. The original Hills Have Eyes, the budget was estimated 300 to 700,000. So it's really broad. It's a really broad. I don't know what the exact numbers, like 350 to 700,000 as far as budget goes. But the return was 25 million at the box office.
Yeah.
So that's pretty good, especially for a movie that I've never watched until recently, and I'm a horror guy. All the way through anyway. The remake was $15 million in budget, and it shows, which is about your standard new age Halloween movie. Like these days, I think they usually come around 15 million in budget. It made 70 million at the box office. So not too bad. I guess is basically his family, story-wise, the family just I don't even know. Did they ever explain the purpose of why the family, they're going to California?
Yeah, they're going to California. The dad's recently retired from the police department, and they were also, I think maybe in both of them, they were celebrating like their 25th or 30th anniversary. It was a couple of different things that was going on. And so they were taking a trip as a family to commemorate it.
Of course, they come across this gas station area just out in the middle of nowhere in the desert on their way. And it's overrun by crazy hill people. Depending on which version you watch, It's obviously it's around this nuclear test site the government has for testing nuclear weapons, and it plays heavy into that in the remake, a lot more heavy into that into the remake, whereas it's only slightly mentioned, I think, a few times in the beginning in the original. I guess let's just go ahead and get into categories because we're going to sit here and talk about story. So story is our first category. We're also doing setting, acting. We're doing scare factor this time because it is a horror versus, and we're doing villains, better villains, and we'll talk about the villains here too. So since we're already talking about story, and before we make our picks, let's continue with that. What do you think about this? Because like the differences, I should say, because how they wreck in the beginning is also very different.
Yeah, I thought that was kind of like as we get into this, you'll find out I like the original just a little bit more. But like how they wreck in the original is pretty stupid.
Yeah, I know, right? That's what I thought. I'm like, the whole time I'm like, what? And I was rolling my eyes like, this is ridiculous. The family, they're arguing, they're yelling. You got this plane, this jet, because it is a nuclear test site. You got this jet flying low over their heads, and it's scaring them. Everything's just chaos, and it's chaos out of nowhere. The dad, who's a retired cop, is driving like a maniac down this dirt road for no reason. No one's around, but he's driving like a maniac. And just, yeah, they end up swerving off the road. And
was it a rabbit he tried to miss?
Yeah, it was like a rabbit or something was out in the road, and it was just a mess. Like, it was so crazy. Whereas in the remake, they spike stripped him,
right,
and caused their crash. And of course, they were in like this Suburban or whatever.
Yeah,
it's old, like an
old 80s Suburban or something.
Yeah, or something like that. And in the original, it's like a station wagon pulling this bullet camper. Anyway, yeah, I thought that was really dumb. I like the remake's version a lot better. Another difference too is the guy in the remake at the gas station told them about this shortcut to take, which is why they were on that road in the first place. So he was setting them up for the hill people. In the original, he told them not to go off the main road. He was trying to get out. He's like, I'm leaving. So you don't veer off the highway, which of course the dad does because he's a jackass. And I liked Ted Levine as the dad in the remake more than I did the older one, just because.
How are you going to beat Ted Levine?
Well, yeah, for one, you can't beat Ted Levine, but just even the character who is a very hardened, tough dad, and obviously an ex cop, a retired cop. The original, he was kind of an ass. Like, he was just kind of just a pain in the ass all around. I didn't care that his character got killed in the original. In the remake, I'm like, oh, this just sucks for him, man.
Yeah,
this sucks. As far as story goes, though, with a few minor differences like that, and things happen in maybe a little bit in a different sequence or a little bit quicker in the remake, the pacing was probably a little bit better. They're more or less the same. I mean, everything follows pretty close to the same formula here.
Yeah, with the exception of that nuclear test town that was added into the
that was added. Yeah, the new one had the nuclear test town.
Which I did kind of like that.
I did too. Obviously, the gore, a lot more excessive in the 06 remake. But, that's also with the times. You have Saw by this time, I think. Was 04, right?
Yeah, you've got the Texas Chainsaw remake from 03 that was really big, and you could tell that influenced this probably.
Absolutely. So I guess as far as story goes, original versus the remake, what's your pick?
I'm gonna go original. It's about 15 minutes shorter, and it feels like a quicker movie to me.
It does.
As far as that goes, like you said, the whole deal with the wreck in the beginning, stupid. But I did like, how that character of Ruby is more in the first one. I mean, she plays a bigger part. I did like the nuclear test stuff, but I don't know. Something about that first one. It's just a little more streamlined for me, and something about that I like.
Yeah, and they were more hill-like people. You don't really see the effects of the radiation in this one. They're obviously very deformed and grotesque in the new one. They're just depraved hill people in this one. I felt like the original was a little bit better as far as story goes. I mean, yeah, you got more explanation on the radiation and why these people looked like they did and acted like they did, probably. But
I felt like they were
like
spelling that out for people.
yeah, I felt like they were spelling it out for people a lot more. I'm kind of like you when it comes to movies, especially older ones like this. I like lean.
Yeah.
And Hills Have Eyes, the original, is lean. While I do think it's a better, obviously shot, produced film, it should be, you know, 6. I think the leaner, the better in this situation. I felt like it was a little bit more realistic as well and not over the top.
Yeah.
Because 06 was a little bit over the top in places.
There were a couple of other things I liked about this movie. The ending of the original was really abrupt, you know, with him just stabbing that guy. But you look at movies from the 70s like this, and you're talking post-Vietnam where everything was just nihilistic and nasty. Yeah. And I actually kind of preferred that over them walking away, you know, the 3 of them and the baby. And I guess there actually was a scene shot in the original Hills Have Eyes with that same ending, but they wanted to go that nasty route in it.
Ending with him stabbing in a freeze frame or whatever.
Yeah. And I also like how they set up the main bad guy there at the end in the original, you know, where they use the mom as bait to bring him in. I actually like that better than how the remake was done.
I do too. I agree. I agree with that. I don't agree. I like the remake's ending a little bit better. I don't like the abrupt ending of this one, of the original. I don't like abrupt endings on most movies. The freeze frame is so cheesy to me when you get the freeze frame stuff, and I don't know. I know it was kind of the time. I don't hate it, but I like the remake better. But as far as everything else goes, the original's better. I think so. Like I said, it's leaner. Maybe it's just because I watched the original and then I watched the remake. They explained a lot of things in the remake as far as like the radiation goes. They explained it probably a little bit too much, or maybe they showed a little bit too much of it. They didn't spend enough time on suspense. Right. They didn't build tension. They didn't build suspense in the remake. I would much rather them build the tension and focus on what may be out there and have the characters react to that better. Does that make sense?
Yeah, and they did that a lot more in the original with the younger brother.
Yeah, with the younger brother, they spent more time with him finding Beauty dead, and the trauma he's facing, the confusion. He knows something's going on. I like that a lot better than the remake. And I think that wins out over all the testing bullshit that they had to throw in there. Yeah, and the gore, yeah.
And Kenny, of course, took the remake, as we'll find. That's a recurring theme in this versus for him.
Yeah. He took the remake.
But that's okay because we win.
Yeah, we win. and to true Brandon fashion, I failed to put the story graphic up because that's what I do. But that's okay. So 77 Hills Have Eyes wins that category for us, 2-1. All right. I'm not going to fail anymore on this. We're going to go to setting atmosphere. We touched on it just a little bit. Setting, mostly the same, other than the added nuclear site. The setting pretty much looks the same. Obviously, just a little bit cleaner, a little bit better in the new one because of budget and time. I'm going to have to go with a remake on the setting.
Yeah. I am too.
Just because it looks better, it's done better. And in the nuclear testing site was a nice addition. I like that. Yeah. The mine.
I like they really showed the scope of the desert in the second one with some of the panoramic shots. I really liked it. I enjoyed that. I thought that was really smart. They're kind of, confined to that little valley they're in there in the hills in the first one, and that gas station. And so I thought there was, just seemed bigger and more, more spacious in the remake.
Yeah, I agree. And as far as like atmosphere goes, I still pick the remake too. It just like I said, that broader look at that makes it much better, I think, and obviously it adds to that creep factor
Yeah.
a little bit more. But I won't say it's necessarily scarier. It's just I don't know, just better.
Yeah.
So I don't know. Is there anything else to say? Kenny picked the remake too, so I think the remake is going to win that setting category.
Yeah.
It's been a
No,
long time.
I liked it. I thought it was really cool. You know, we're from the Midwest, so all that's kind of foreign to us. You know,
Yeah.
I've been through the desert one time, but I really enjoyed the setting to both of them. You know, even though they were just kind of encamped in this one spot for the most part, I thought they did a good job.
Yeah, I agree. Well, since we spent so much time on story and all that shit, we'll just move right along to acting. I'm going to pick the remake on acting, just straight up. It's, I mean, I love Dee Wallace, and I thought Dee Wallace was amazing in the original Hills Have Eyes. I also got to give a shout out to who's the ugly looking dude? What's his name?
In the remake?
In the old one, the bald one.
Oh, Michael Berryman.
Michael Berryman, yeah. I got to give a shout out to Michael Berryman. Like, just, I mean, what a creepy dude.
Yeah.
And I know we're not talking about villains.
Playing creatures and just I love him in everything.
Yeah, I do too. You know, we're not talking about villains yet, really, but there's just not a lot. There's not a lot going on in the original as far as acting goes, and you know, there's not any big names, which I wouldn't expect there to be. But you know, like the guy who plays Doug in the original, just so dry and so goofy.
Yeah.
And he's, God, it was hard to look past. He was such a goofy looking dude with that big mustache. I know it was the time, but God, it was just, I wasn't a fan of his character. But I will give him credit. He took a lot less of an ass beating in the original than he did in the remake. The remake, that character about died.
Fingers chopped off and covered in blood.
Yeah. Yeah, the original, he just unscathed completely. He played it pretty smart. Hands down, the 06, you know, better actors. You got Ted Levine, Vanessa Shaw, for those, she was Hocus Pocus as Allison. Dan Bird, love Dan Bird. He was good in this as Bobby. Kathleen Quinlan was in this. Love Kathleen Quinlan. I don't know who was Brenda. Emile the Raven. I don't really know her. She looked familiar, but I know
she was all right.
She's all right. She did a good job. That was another difference in like story wise between the original and the remake. Is, I mean, she was full on raped in the remake.
Yeah, well, I think she was in the original too.
Was she? Because
it wasn't as implied as badly.
Okay. Yeah. Well, I was to say maybe it was implied a little bit. I when I was watching, I'm like, I think they cut away a lot, and you could your mind kind of goes there, but they didn't. I don't know. It just, like you said, it wasn't implied as heavily, so I wasn't really sure. This one, she was. Yeah. So, which I'm not a big fan of showing stuff like that. I know it's horrible, like it's horrible, but I've never been a big fan of showing stuff like that, even though it's, you know, part of things.
It's scarier just to cut away from it and let your mind wander as to what's going on.
Yeah. You know, it's because it's not like, you know, I've watched I Spit on Your Grave. I've watched that. I watched the remake even, and you know, it's rough. Like that's rough, man.
That's what you did to get heel heat in the 70s, though, man. You had to,
I know. Yeah, and there's plenty. You had plenty of that in the 70s. Good Lord. I Spit on Your Grave might have been the worst thing I've ever seen, but
Last House on the Left.
Yeah, Last House on the Left was like that, but I just don't. Man, it's just hard to watch that stuff. I can't. It's hard for me. It's like that's so crazy, and nothing really bothers me, but that usually get like, I'm like, I can't do this. This is rough. Like I'm just kind of doing this the whole time. Like, let's get past this quick.
Yeah.
I think it's more like time. Like it's just the timing. You got 06 versus 77. You got a higher budget. You got a remake of something that was already successful. It's kind of like the Texas Chainsaw Massacre remake. You're going to have better acting. You're going to have, everything's going to be better most of the way all around.
Yeah. I'm actually going to go the other way and stand out here on a limb by myself. To Ted Levine was the best actor in Hills Have Eyes, hands down. He's better. He's the better Big Bob,
Yeah, for sure.
of these two. And Vanessa Shaw, the big sister. As much as I love Dee Wallace, she's probably better. But everybody else, I kind of liked better in the original.
Oh,
Yeah, Bobby wasn't the greatest in the original, but I hate that kid in the remake. Absolutely hate that angsty teenage kid. And his dad's this cop, and he gives him a gun to sit there and protect the family. And the first thing he does is point it at Doug.
I know.
Dude, no.
I know. That was, yeah. He's like, oh, relax, the safety's on. Like, dude, you don't.
Yeah,
like,
you don't. Why do you have that? And
as an avid gun owner and supporter, that is the biggest no
that's
that you could do.
one of the dumbest scenes in that movie.
Oh my god! Well, it makes us all look bad. And of course, then Ted Levine's like, oh, he's a Democrat. He don't believe in guns, which is funny. But like, this kid is literally pointing a gun at the Democrat. So I understand now. You're making it seem like this guy's got a reason to say, hey, you shouldn't have a gun. Right. Now, and it's so sad too, because when he the first thing little Bobby does in the remake, when he picks up that gun, before he points it at Doug, is he points it and he aims down the gun like most people do when they grab a gun. They aim it, and I was like, oh my god, this guy's got finger discipline. He's got trigger discipline. He didn't have his finger on the trigger immediately. He had it out, over the trigger guard, and I'm like, that's great. And like in the split second after I said that, he points it at Doug. I'm like, son of a bitch.
But I absolutely hated that character, and the fact that he lived, because he lived in the original, just kind of pissed me off. And the little sister Brenda, I liked her a little better in the original. She plays traumatized to me. She plays it a whole lot longer than they do in the remake.
Yeah,
and I thought she did it a little bit better. And the mom, I thought, was way better in the original. Like, she had more to do.
Well, yeah, she did have more to do, but and obviously they really, like, her character was the goody like, lean heavily on God and all that, and that was fine. But I just thought her line delivery there was a little bit weird, a little bit so.
Yeah,
but she was also in shock. So I mean,
and then
I don't know, I could see that.
I'll get into it later with villains, but I thought the villains were better acted in the original. But we'll get to that. We'll get to that later. But that's why I'm picking it. But it doesn't matter because the remake takes that category.
Yeah. Me and Kenny picked the remake, so yeah, we'll give acting to the remake. But you make good points for sure.
Oh, the other point I wanted to make too, while we were on that, it just hit me. The gas station attendant, I thought he had way more to do in the first one too. They just kind of glossed over that character.
It really did. Yeah, and then he shot himself.
Yeah.
Instead of I thought it was much more effective that he was trying to get out, warn them a little bit by saying, hey, don't get off the highway. And then he comes back and they have like this exchange, and then he gets attacked by the hill people and then gets murdered by the hill people instead of just sitting in the outhouse scared to death and then blows his head off with a shotgun.
Yeah, I like that character a whole lot better too.
I agree with you on that. Okay, so scare factor. I'm gonna go the original. That's just me. I think, although everything looks beautifully shot in the remake, and obviously the characters or the villains, the hill people, they're all grotesque, and it makes sense because the radiation. It really lends itself to that time frame in horror movies. I kind of like just these barbaric, uneducated, like just terrible hill people in the original. I like the darkness of the original. They spent a lot of time. It was quiet. They built tension. Even though it wasn't the greatest acted, especially with little Bobby, everything he went through, finding beauty, the trauma was a little bit more drawn out, and I thought he had kind of room to fester. Yeah. And I like that more. I thought there's something about, like you said, with the rape scene, being implied, not saying that that's scary or let your mind take it. There's also something about those old gritty 70s movies that just make everything so much more uncomfortable. Even though it's not acted and shot as well, it just seems so
almost like a snuff film or something.
Yeah, and it does in a way seem realer. So I have to go with the original. It just, to me, it's a little bit, not that either one of these scare me, but it's a little bit scarier.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm going to go original as well. There was, like you said, the hill people, to me, it was a lot scarier. And the fact, like, you get Bobby out there looking for beauty and they're calling and laughing. And when that dad's, trying to run back, and I thought that was stupid that he's got these heart problems and he's trying to run and they're catcalling him in the dark. And to me, that was just a little bit scarier than, I think the original, and we'll get to this in a little bit, or the remake, suffers a little bit from being too on the nose. It's very much a product of the early to mid 2000s as far as bad guys in a horror movie. Not a whole lot of personality, but we'll get there in just a little bit.
Yeah, I think you owe that to the splatter porn films. Yeah. That's kind of what. And this is not one of those technically. It's a remake.
It's got elements.
It's got elements of that, but I think I think that what you're saying is accurate though too. The villains in those other movies, like Hostel, I don't really like most of the villains in those movies.
And it's a little more psychological in the original Hills Have Eyes.
Yeah, I agree. Anything else to say about Scare Factor? Kenny picked the remake.
So that ties it up.
It does tie it up. So villains is going to be the tiebreaker here. I have a feeling you're going 77.
I'm going 77.
It's going to be the remake.
Yeah, in the remake, they're mostly covered in prosthetics and they're not. I mean, it's really hard to act through that much prosthetics. The main guy who plays Pluto, who was Michael Berryman's character, he's got like one eye because he's so bulbous and grotesque from all the radiation. But I felt like anybody could have done that part.
He took the Leatherface role.
Yeah,
like really, and
you could have put any stuntman in that role. Tyler Mane or whoever, and put him in there. Where you've got Michael Berryman, who gives that role of Pluto, he actually gives it presence and a lot of personality, and I like. And
a lot of that comes down to just natural looks, he just looks like a freak.
and the others I didn't mind so much. The dad who's I think the gas attendant, the original father, hit him with a tire iron, I think he said, and so he's got that permanent mark in his face. They don't have to act through this prosthetics. And I think it lends a lot to their performance. And it is a little bit over the top, but I felt like I felt like the remake, they must have had these guys in the in the makeup department who just went wild, Yeah. And it was really gross looking, but none of them really stood out to me. Other than the one weird one in the chair who couldn't hold his head up, he was pretty creepy. But
then you had the little Fallout babies, the Fallout kids.
Yeah.
I don't know.
I'm 100% original in this category.
Yeah, they added too much, I think. I mean, it's really me to tie break it. Can you pick the? I'm gonna have to go with the original. Have to. I'm with you. I think. I'm just not that big of a fan of splatter porn. And I know that's probably not fair to say about this movie because it's not really splatter porn. But I'm not a fan of these hostile, like hillbilly, deformed people. Like it's scary, but in a way, but it's much scarier when you just have this depraved looking guy that's just rough around the edges who just has no, I don't know, like what they're doing is already bad enough.
Yeah.
do we really have to have this over the top prosthetics? I know that there's a fallout. I know that this is radiation shit. I just don't know, man. I don't care. It just doesn't do it for me. It's just creepier for me when you have a bunch of rough looking characters doing really shitty things.
Yeah.
It's realer and probably a little bit scarier. I think if you would have just had 3 or 4 people like you did in the original and Ruby, then it would have probably been okay. But you added way more than you needed to.
Yeah.
I think. I don't think it was necessary. And then Ruby, like you said, she had more to do in the original. Yep. There's more. You could tell from the very beginning when she showed up to talk to the gas station attendant. He was trying to get out. She said, "Take me with you. I want out."
Yeah.
She's obviously not a bad person. She wasn't all about. She grew up in it, but she wasn't all about that. She wanted to eat and she wanted to get out of that life. And she looked rough, but she looked more normal. Obviously, she wasn't all deformed and in Little Red Riding Hood's outfit in the remake.
Yeah, she reminded me of like a character on Fraggle Rock or something. Like,
yeah, and then yeah, and she lived in the original, I guess, because I mean, if freeze framed on Doug stabbing that dude. In the remake, she sacrificed herself, which also kind of made me roll my eyes a little bit because Doug shot that dude 3 times with a shotgun.
Right.
One time was in the neck and the gut, the neck, and the shoulder or whatever it was, collarbone. Like the dude was dead.
Yeah.
And he still got up in that last minute scare, and Ruby had to push him off the cliff and take herself with him in order to make sure it was all over to save Doug and the baby. I'm like, come on, I don't know. There's just too much. That was a little bit too much for me.
Yeah, I didn't hate the villains in the remake, but
no.
to me, there's no comparison. They're in the remake, they were just a product of their time. You look at those hillbillies in Wrong Turn, and that's exactly what I thought of when I saw them. I'm like, oh, this is just like Wrong Turn.
Yeah, exactly. That's kind of what I don't know. It just doesn't really do it for me. I just spent more time rolling my eyes at the villains in the remake. I don't hate them, like you said. I don't know. Like I was more worried about the family. The family made me care enough in both versions, but the villains kind of take you out, especially when you get to the testing site.
Yeah,
that really took me out of the whole thing. The creepiest scene, the best scene for everybody involved in both versions was that sequence between them setting Big Bob on fire.
Yeah.
And then while they're distracted, Brenda's getting raped and attacked. They're stealing the baby. And then Lynn shows up, gets shot. The mom shows up, gets shot. Just terrible. All those things unfolding. It's just so terrible. And that's really the best sequence in both versions.
Yeah. Yeah, I'd agree.
Yeah, I'm going with 77 on the villains. It just less is more in this case. In every case, less is always more. And I know Kenny loves the remake. I'll watch it again. Don't get me wrong. I like the remake was okay. I think it was beautifully shot. It looks better. I like some of the actors in it.
Yeah, and I didn't hate it. I thought it was a pretty decent movie, but I think I like
the
original quite a bit better.
Yeah, it's worth watching. But I like Hills Have Eyes, the original, just a little bit better.
Wes Craven, baby.
Wes Craven in his earlier days.
And it was funny. I read somewhere that he got the idea for this story. They were going across the desert, and he got into it with these locals, and they, I think they had shot an arrow past his head or something, and he threatened to sue him. And they said, "Boy, we'll kill you and throw you in the mine, and nobody will ever find you again," or something like that. And that's what gave him the idea to write this. So, hit a little close to home, I guess. With him.
I guess so. Scared him enough. He was Wes Craven. He's kind of like Carpenter. He's kind of a master of horror, but he's more a master of the really uncomfortable shit.
Yeah. I always thought, we do verses on this channel. I don't know that to be fair because we love Carpenter so much on this channel, but I always thought a Craven versus Carpenter would be like a really cool episode. But
yeah.
Like you said, his is the more uncomfortable stuff.
Yeah. Especially his earlier stuff.
Watch who you trust kind of stuff. But
yeah. Yeah. Neither one of them have the best endings.
Yeah.
Most of the time, Craven even had maybe better endings than Carpenter does. But yeah, the road getting there is a little bit rougher on Craven movies. Definitely makes you pay for it. Anyway, yeah. So 77 is going to win this one.
Not mad.
I'm not that mad at it. No disrespect, Kenny. I know you're going to watch this and be like, "What the fuck?"
He'd be slapping his head if he was here.
Yeah, I guarantee it. But you know what? That's what you get for liking Point Break over Roadhouse.
I'm going to remain silent.
Yeah. I know how you feel too, Andrew. What do we got coming up? We're going to stay horror at least one more go for verses.
Yeah.
We're going 81 slashers, and we're going to do a triple threat match.
Yeah.
On this
because we all agreed the best slashers of 81, of course, is Halloween and Friday the 13th, and we've done those videos twice.
Yeah.
So we're going to go the next in line, what we feel are the next best. That's My Bloody Valentine versus The Burning versus The Prowler. And we'll probably have a lot more categories since that's a triple threat.
Yeah, so. It should be a good one. And I think the last triple threat we had was the remakes, right? Halloween, Nightmare, and Friday remakes.
Yeah.
So that's a long time ago.
Yeah.
So that ought to be a pretty good episode.
Yeah, and I think after that we might have Mad Max coming. So that's kind of a view into the future. So
yeah, Mad Max is coming out, the new one. We'll do Mad Max versus right after that too. So okay, cool. Anything else we want to say about that?
Oh, man.
Go watch both these movies.
Yeah.
And see what you think. Let us know in the comments below which version you take over the other, what your thoughts are on the categories. Be sure to like and subscribe, all that good jazz. You don't want to miss what's coming up. We got a lot of good stuff. Until next time, we'll see you.
We're out of here.
We're out of here.